So they were sort of using the text that they were reading as a guide to helping design their own play.
In a sense, I mean, I would say it was more synergy. You know, I mean, you bring to the plays your experience as a performer, and you bring your experience. You know, it's the other way around. You bring the experience of the plays to your performance as well. So there's, and I think that it led the quality of discussion suddenly improved. The whole thing was better.
Okay. So essentially, it was experiential learning.
Yes, I suppose you could say that. Yeah.
So what impact do you think that had on the outcome of the course?
Well, it went from being a somewhat frustrating course for everybody to one that we all enjoyed. I mean, I think it was a real celebration at the end of the work they had done. I was astonished at the real group effort that the final play symbolized. I think I was lucky. There was a student in the class who had a lot of experience with high school drama and was the only one who had that experience, and was also an excellent leader. So she was able to basically become the director and take charge of this project, which I think really held it together in a way that it may not have in another kind of class composition. So I think that they ultimately ended up bonding in a course in the way that I've come to understand is unusual at Stony Brook, because they were forced to work with each other. I think they understood something about the material that was just eluding them for most of the course before that. And I think overall, as an assessment exercise, it was just so much better and more effective than a kind of formal written final exam would have been.
What impact did this have on how you think about teaching? I mean, did you take this experience and bring it into your other courses?
Yes. I think when you teach in English, so much of the work you do is labor intensive. You're teaching the skill of close reading, you're teaching the skill of writing, and it often ends up being a kind of one-on-one work with students very often, or it ends up being a seminar setting where you are trying to draw out certain kinds of questions. And I think that shifting this model in this way in this course so early on in my teaching career really made me rethink how much group work and collaborative work I put into my courses. So most of my courses now have some kind of collaborative component where I try to get students to work with each other. It's not always as successful as this particular course was, but I always find that there are some students who find friends or who find like-minded classmates because of these exercises, and it makes for a much more cohesive course than otherwise.
Okay, so what's next?
For me, for my teaching? Well, as I was just saying to you, I really think that there have to be, I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to get students to collaborative writing projects online. So for instance, I make them do a lot of writing poetry in my poetry courses, which they then compile into a blog, so they actually kind of write poems to each other, and then they compile anthologies. And I'm curious about extending some of that to actually make it a more an experience that will allow them to have a wider audience, so sort of do a more focused project around creating an anthology or a writing project. And as I said to you, I'm kind of curious, I've been toying with the idea of how broadcast work could help students in writing and speaking classes to actually think about themselves as writers, as performers, which is pretty crucial to their ability to kind of engage with the world.
So essentially you're taking your experience where the students did a play in front of an audience and taking that online in blogs and other ways of exposing the students' work to others.
I think that's right. I mean, I think one of the important things I learned is that the classroom experience can often seem very constraining and stifling because it's just you, the teacher, and the student. So they often feel like that, you know, I'm writing papers for a grade from this particular teacher, or I need to just perform in this way for this particular class to do well. And there isn't any sense in which that course or its content actually connects with anything beyond the classroom. So I think that the way to break that constraint is, and I think this is really important in the humanities in particular, is to find ways in which the classroom experience speaks to things outside of the classroom, and creating other audiences and other kinds of activities or assessment exercises that aren't simply about, you know, you, the teacher, and the student, makes a big difference, I think, to the quality of their learning.
You've hit on a very interesting point. One of the things that I think disappoints a lot of faculty is the fact that students no longer come to an institute of higher education to be educated. They come to earn grades or make their way into professions, the vast majority of them.
I think that's cynical. I do. And this may be just because I'm young, but one of the things I actually learned in this course is, which was a course full of the sort of cynical kind of student, you know, the pre-med, I'm just here for an A.
I wouldn't say that they're all that way, but sometimes they lose sight of that. That's
Yes.
why they're there, and they become so focused on the grade. And what you're doing is you're bringing that back to them. You're saying, this has real application in the real world. You're performing this for other people. You're exposing your work to other people. It's not just the grade, it's the education.
Yes, I mean, I also want to say I was struck by how thoughtful students themselves were about the quality of their education. And I found this in other classes as well, where if you actually talk to them about what they think is important to what they're learning, they don't always just come down to the grade. I think the problem is that the perception often is on their part that faculty don't think about the kind of overall broader sense of their education, and don't have it in sight that, you know, they're in debt, that they have to get jobs. And I think that if they feel that you're aware of those constraints, but you're also trying to find ways to make this a meaningful experience for them, they're very receptive. And one of my students actually said to me at the end of this play exercise, he said, you know, I thought to myself, yes, I need an A, but when else in my life am I going to have this opportunity to do a play? And I thought it's really important for me to do this in college. And that's coming from somebody who was a very serious pre-med student for whom the A really did matter. And taking that risk really did mean a lot, you know. And I think that there are a lot of students like that. There are a lot of students like that who are very thoughtful about wanting more than just the grade. And this was very instructive to me in not giving in to, I think, what often tends to be a certain kind of faculty cynicism about what students want.
Question for our audience. Ayesha has talked about using group work in her class. How do we ensure that students are all contributing equally to the group process?